Today, I'm going to walk you through the steps in how to create a self-portrait. Hopefully this will be pretty clear for you and you have the materials to follow along at home. It's important to start by finding a good mirror or a place where you can work. And for me, it is a nice space in the upstairs of where I am currently located. Here's a look at my current setup. I've got the mirror on one side and I've got my drawing here. It might be helpful to actually face the same direction as where you're drawing, but I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to sit with my body to my workspace and I'm going to look in the mirror like this and I'm going to figure out what my pose is. Holding the phone next to my head like this, I can actually give you a pretty good idea of what it is I'm seeing when I look in the mirror. I've turned my paper horizontally because my field of view is horizontal in the mirror. I'm actually going to use the edges of my paper to help define where my drawing is going to end up, and because if I kind of find my pose, that's the first thing you want to do is find your pose. I'm looking in the mirror and I am seeing that this is where I feel comfortable kind of working and turning my body to look. So I want to kind of look at where my head is in the frame, and for me actually it's being intersected by the top, so my head is actually cropped a little bit on the top of the frame, and I want to lightly use structural lines to sketch in where my head is going to go. So I'm finding basically angles that tell me the angles of the edges of my head. As I keep going, I'm going to block in some of the big shapes I'm seeing. Always checking to see how things line up in the horizontal or vertical. Once I've got my head blocked in, I can kind of block in the shape of my face. First I'm going to find my head shape there, block in my hairline, or what's left of it. And you also want to measure to see how, what angle your eyes are at and how far down they go. So for me it's something like that. That's where my eyes are going to line up. Actually it should be much flatter, something more like that. We can continually erase structural lines so that they're not getting in the way and giving us bad information. And I want to find the center line in my face. So if I was looking directly in the mirror, I would see a line going right down the middle of my face. Since I'm turned at a 3/4 angle, meaning I see 3/4 of my face and 1/4 of my face is hidden from view, of course that number is an approximation, this line is going to be off to the left. For you it might be different. Continuing, I can use the place where I put my eyes to start blocking in other shapes. I can use my eyebrows, and I can use my nose against the outside of my profile. And we're still just doing structural lines here, which is why the lines are all still so light. Now, I know that I want my eyes to more or less be parallel to this line, so I'm going to go ahead and start to figure out where on that line they should be. I've got the edge of my nose here, which is a pretty good landmark, and I've got the edge of my face here. and I know that an eye takes up most of this space. So I'm going to study the geometry of that curve of the upper eyelid and of the lower eyelid. And now I can kind of lightly pencil in the anatomy of the eye. Going over, now I can calculate how far the other eye should be. If I say that my ear is here, for example, I can place my other eye in between this eye and the ear. I know it's slightly to the left of center between them. Like that. Now I can go in and finish finding where the nose goes. Somewhere in there. I can use my eyeglasses and you want to keep everything flexible because stuff is going to move around. You're going to figure out that you made mistakes and you're going to want to be able to fix them. Just lightly penciling in the features of the face. A little structural line to help me figure out where the mouth ends. Looks like I made it a little bit too high, so I want to go ahead and fix the mouth. I'm not sure the angle was right anyway. You're going to find when you do a self-portrait that you have a very serious expression on your face. And that is because you are concentrating hard on what you are doing. It's okay. You're going to look a little bit angry. Or you could be a person like me who just always looks a little bit angry when they're not smiling. So I'm starting to kind of bounce around a little bit and fill in some of the details as I see them, switching between structural and observed lines. And that's fine. I'm also noticing that the proportions of my initial structural lines are getting shifted around somewhat by the details that I'm finding in my observed lines. And you should let your observations kind of lead the way and just sort of adjust as you go. Each time you add a set of lines or a set of observations, make sure that the rest of your drawing is being flexible and adjusting itself so that everything fits together. So you might need to erase or whatever, and that's okay. Once you've got a reasonable line drawing like this, then you can start to shade. I like to start with the eyes because they're usually the darkest, and I'm just using a regular number 2 pencil that I brought from the classroom. This is not any special kind of drawing pencil. So how do we figure out what to shade first? Well, we want to squint and kind of figure out where are the darkest areas of our drawing. For me, that's going to be eyeballs, rims of my glasses, And you don't have to take a ton of time on this. This really should be something that you can do over the course of about an hour and a half. If you know exactly where you're sitting and what your whole setup is, you can even come back to it a few times so you don't have to do it all at once. And it's starting to look like me. That's kind of a cool thing when it happens. Don't be afraid to go really dark with this. I'm going to want to see that you gave some shading to every single part of the drawing. As you get away from the features of your eyes and the middle of your face, you can start to speed up and abbreviate a little bit more. That's something that we can see if we look at John Singer Sargent, who was amazing at this. He used to do a highly finished looking sketch like this in about 3 hours, putting everybody else to shame, really. And it might be helpful also to just give a little bit of attention to the background. So again, as you get away from the eyes, you can start to add a few details about what's going on in the background. For me, I've got my painting behind me, so that's a good background for me. I'm going to add it in very quickly so I'm not spending too much time on it, because that can get very time consuming and very annoying very quickly. The idea is just to kind of place yourself in a space. So maybe there's like just a tiled wall behind you or whatever. It doesn't really matter too much. And I'm just quickly giving a sense of atmosphere here. Okay, so we got to this point. Now we can start doing the folding and cutting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my nice, amazing drawing and I'm going to fold it roughly in half. I don't want to fold it too perfectly. And then I'm going to go ahead and fold it again like this. I want to make sure that my folds are all intersecting. So that's 2 folds, and now I can continue and make a third one. And let's try one more going through here. So the next thing I want to do is I want to actually cut along those folds. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I have all of them nice and clear. I'm going to fold it this way and then back this way. And you're going to smudge your drawing a little bit doing this if you use the folding method, and that's okay. Once you've made all those folds, you can continue. I'm going to just cut these out. And lastly, once you get everything cut out, let's rearrange it in a random way. So I made a sort of a mosaic of my work, which I'm going to just tape on the back. So we end up with this really cool looking fractured artwork, which is a little bit cubistic.